greatly influences society. They inform people about what is happening. It permeates people's lives by creating their own criteria and opinions. In this way, the media moves the masses, creating different social movements.
For over 60 years, the people of Ambazonia were deprived of such privileges. The privilege to enhance their own criteria and opinion. They have suffered cultural genocide for 6 long decades, but not in this age and not with Undaunted ABC Amba News on board.
You must understand that wars are fought and won in the media. The speed of the revolution on Ambazonia's quest for freedom cannot be explained without highlighting the diligent use of the media.
Franco-Cameroon colonizers, among other strategic moves, weaponized the media against Ambazonia for so long, and they continue to do so even today. The question would be, how much do the oppressed people of Ambazonia need to counter the media rage?
Indeed, how much more is required to stop the genocide? The carnage in Ambazonia didn't start today. In 1961, 1972, 1984, and 1992, Ambazonians were slaughtered in huge numbers and help was not forthcoming. Why? Because the oppressor was the piper in the media.
The good news is we have what it takes to dictate the pace.
Right now, ABC Amba TV is taking advantage of the wonders of multimedia aggressively
to inform the misinformed and disinformed with Undaunted and other revolutionary programs bringing to the news untold stories.
Most importantly, to win the media war by taking ABC Amba TV into every multimedia platform.
In a word, where the importance of storytelling can never be overemphasized, Ambazonians has to tell her own story, not the other way round.
And like we say it always, Ambazonia must narrate her story accurately. We can do this together, you know, right? You are just a click away. Visit our website at www.abcambatv.com, and the steps are quite simple.
With just a click on the website, you can become a club member with so many benefits.
You can also make a one-time donation, advertise and showcase your goods and services at the marketplace on the website.
That was easy, right? You're welcome on board.
And thank you for opting for the winning team. The Amba World Draft Award 22 is here. People, it's time to win again.
This is the time for us to draft until we draft. That must be our slogan and rallying cry now. And along the way, we should be asking ourselves some critical questions.
Are we still enjoying 3 square meals a day? While our boys on the ground lack the basic gear they need to resist the occupiers?
Are we still living a life of luxury and comfort, while our brave restoration forces lack medical supplies at the home front?
Are we still throwing big birthday bashes while our restoration forces lack basic communication equipment to maximize their efforts?
Are we still going on cruises and expensive vacations while our IDFs on the ground go without food and logistics?
Are we still finding excuses not to make the necessary sacrifices and drafting big while our restoration forces lack the game-changing equipment that they so desperately need to bleed the enemy?
On a daily basis, how much are we putting aside for our liberation, knowing that only through the fierce resistance are we going to liberate our beloved country?
Are we providing the federal government and the CIC the means to carry out some of the critical intelligence and other special operations across the national territory?
As we ponder these questions, we must remember that a goal that is not founded is nothing but a wish. And we must not let Ambazonia die as a wish, because we failed to fulfill our patriotic duties by making the great sacrifices befitting a great people.
The World Draft once more is coming to your county. Stand up and be counted. No greater victory was ever achieved than by greater sacrifices. We are enough, so let's draft, and draft until we drop. Our existence as a people depends on that.
It is Award 22. Let us draft until we drop.
Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. President Samuel Sako says no to French subjugation and arrogance. If issues about Ambazonia must be discussed anywhere, the Ambazonian leadership must be involved. This never-again generation will not tolerate such arrogance ever again. And as you already know, the president has declared a 3-day lockdown in the entire national territory of Ambazonia. According to his words, the Ambazonian Restoration Forces will be on high alert to ensure enforcement of this order. It is now clear French President Macron will visit one of the French provinces, La République du Cameroon, from Monday 25th to Tuesday 26th of July 2022. According to CNA News, succession and armed conflict in the so-called Anglophone region may be top on discussion during this first visit of French President Macron. In reaction to that, the president of Ambazonia, Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako, says no way, enough of the arrogance. You're not talking about Ambazonia in the absence of Ambazonia ever again. There is going to be bearing to such talks. The IMF World Bank declares the Cameroon under Biya's hegemony a failed state. And you would like to ask, what can possibly be the justification why there is no industry in the southern Cameroon? Why are the farm-to-market roads abandoned by the Boys regime? In tonight's Undaunted, we will examine the intricacies. Extortion of cab drivers by the colonial regime's police force at checkpoints they mounted in southern Cameroon continues to increase. That's why we've got two defeats like never before. This weekend will be the defeat for Manu. I know you can't wait to get details of the preparedness of Manu County ahead of Saturday's big day. But first, let's get the prime headlines.
Prime headlines for today, July 2022. Around the world, from South Asia and Africa to Europe and Latin America, the cost of fuel in a car's tank, getting to work and cooking dinner has spiked. Fuel shortage hit La République du Cameroon as well, but they have been condemned by IMF and World Bank as a failed state. It is now clear French President Macron will visit one of the French provinces, La République du Cameroon, from Monday 25th to Tuesday 26th of July 2022. The economy of southern Cameroon has been limping with the objective of the colonial regime of La République du Cameroon headed by Paul Biya to render southern Cameroonians miserable. We will be dissecting again the alarming extortion and transporters by La République du Cameroon police force in Ambazonia mounted at different places. Draft is here again this weekend. Today, we will discover Manyu County. We will talk about the history, culture, and tourism sites. And in sports, CAF reveals top 3 finalists of nominees ahead of the CAF Award on Thursday. Manyu, more Manyu, Awio. This weekend, all roads will be leading to Manyu County for Award 22. That's definitely going to be the focus of tonight's Undaunted. But as you can see, the escalating fuel prices is no longer a story on television. It's hitting the Cameroons a big time. Yesterday, filling stations were jam-packed. The IMF and World Bank says it is a failed state. This is where we will begin the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. I am Onyi Okbale, and as always, here with me is Esther Smart. Good evening, Esther.
Good evening, Onyi. La République du Cameroon is a failed state. Nobody doubts that. I think the IMF World Bank is just saying the obvious. The obvious. Let us look at what is happening in the world of business and fuel prices, and we'll get back to that. Consumers can expect fuel prices at the pump to remain high into next year due to disruptions to Russian oil supplies and as refineries struggle to meet demand recovering from the pandemic, consultancy Wood Mackenzie said. According to Reuters, the pressure should ease in the second half of next year when several new large refineries, including the Middle East, are expected to start up, Wood Mac said in a report. For now, record gasoline and diesel prices in the United States, Europe and elsewhere have cooled global oil demand by around 1 million barrels per day BPD. Roughly 1% of global demand, according to Wood Mackenzie analyst Alan Gelder. Consumers can expect fuel prices at the pump to remain high into next year due to disruptions to Russian oil supplies as refineries struggle to meet recovering from the pandemic. This is what consultancy Wood Mackenzie says.
The pressure should ease in the second half of next year when several new large refineries, including in the Middle East, are expected to start up, Woodmark said in a report. For now, record gasoline and diesel prices in the world states, in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere have cooled global oil demand by around 1 million barrels per day BPD, roughly 1% of global demand, according to Wood Mackenzie analyst Alan Gelder. The strain is particularly felt in the diesel and gas oil market, which remains undersupplied by around 800,000 BPD, according to Woodmark figures. The fuel price spike has squeezed household budgets as the cost of travels skyrockets in many parts of the world. Woodmark expects around 2.5 million PBD of new refining capacity to be brought online over the next 3 quarters, including the new 400,000 BPD Jizan refinery in Saudi Arabia, Dangote 650,000 BPD oil refinery in Nigeria, the 615,000 BPD Elzo refinery in Kuwait, and a number of sites in China.
On July 14th, Reuters reported that after exceeding $5 a gallon for the first time in history, U.S. gasoline prices are finally falling, giving some relief to consumers in the world's largest user of the fuel. The average retail price for gasoline nationwide is still $4.631, down from a record of $5.014 a month ago, but still $1.485 higher than a year ago, according to the American Automobile Association. Prices are on a trajectory to keep falling for at least the next few weeks. Global fuel demand has been declining because of the high prices and the strong US dollar, making oil more expensive elsewhere. Supply remains tight, so after that point, it's uncertain whether prices will continue to fall. The question is, why have gasoline prices fallen? U.S. gasoline prices have followed a drop in the futures market for both crude oil and gasoline. Those markets are down because investors are worried interest rate hikes will slow the economy as central banks get aggressive in combating inflation. U.S. demand for gasoline, jet fuel and diesel is down more than 10% compared to 2019, before the pandemic began, according to the Energy Information Administration. Gasoline stations have responded by lowering prices. The dollar is also having an effect. Oil is generally priced in US dollars, so a stronger greenback makes the commodity more expensive to holders of other currencies. Earlier this week, the dollar index, which tracks the currency against a basket of 6 counterparts, climbed to 108.56, its highest level since October 2002.
Another question we are asking this evening and we hope to answer is, where has gasoline prices declined the most? Across the United States, 46 states and the District of Columbia have seen decline in prices. The Midwest has seen some of the sharpest drops, with prices down over the last month in Indiana by 52 cents and in Ohio by 51 cents. By contrast, over the last month, prices have actually risen in a few Rocky Mountain states and Hawaii. U.S. gasoline prices down from peak. Will gasoline prices continue to fall? Well, retail prices should continue to slide, but the figures in the market remains highly volatile. Weakened economic activities as well as continuing cases of coronavirus in China could lead to a drop in fuel demand, which would lead to lower prices later in the year. What role do wholesale gasoline prices play? Now, lack of U.S. refining capacity has caused the price of wholesale gas to rise more quickly than crude oil prices, which has added to the cost of gasoline. The so-called 321 crack spread, a proxy for refining margin, is hovering around $45.50 US, down to $15 from peaks reached last month, but still historically very high. That means refiners are profiting handsomely from processing oil into gas.
And in addition, the gap between the wholesale price of gasoline, or the price refiners sell the fuel at, and its retail price is $1.20, significantly higher than the 87-cent average since November 2016. Well, Gab Ellison has an inclusive report on the escalating fuel prices in different parts of the world. Let's follow up with him.
Around the world, from South Asia and Africa to Europe and Latin America, the cost of filling a car's tank, getting to work, and cooking dinner has spiked. No es suficiente. It's not enough. That was the message protest leaders in Ecuador delivered to the country's president this past week after he said he would lower the price of both regular gas and diesel by 10 cents in response to riotous demonstrations over soaring fuel and food prices. The fury and fear over energy prices that have exploded in Ecuador are playing out the world over. In the United States, average gasoline prices, which have jumped to 5% per gallon, are burdening consumers and forcing an excruciating political calculus on President Biden ahead of the midterm congressional elections this fall. But in many places, the leap in fuel cost has been much more dramatic and the ensuing misery much more acute. Families worry how to keep the lights on, fill the car's gas tank, heat their homes and cook their food. Businesses grapple with rising transit and operating costs and with demands for wage increases from their workers. The staggering increase in the price of fuel has the potential to rewire economic, political, and social relations around the world. High energy costs have a cascading effect and feeding inflation, compelling central banks to raise interest rates, crippling economic growth and hampering efforts to combat ruinous climate change. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the largest exporter of oil and gas to global markets, and the retaliatory sanctions that followed have caused gas and oil prices to gallop with an outstanding ferocity. The unfolding calamity comes on top of 2 years of upheaval caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, off and on, shutdowns and supply chain snarls. Across the continent, countries are preparing blueprints for emergency rationing that involve caps and sales, reduced speed limits, and lower thermostats. As is usually the case with crisis, the poorest and most vulnerable will feel the harshest effects. The International Energy Agency warned last month that higher energy prices have meant an additional 90 million people in Asia and Africa do not have access to electricity. Expensive energy radiates pain, contributing to high food prices, lowering standards of living, and exposing millions to hunger. Steeper transportation costs increase the price of every item that is trucked, shipped, or flown, whether it's a shoe, cell phone, soccer ball, or prescription drug. The simultaneous rise in energy and food prices is a double punch in the gut for the poor in practically every country, said Esra Prasad, an economist at Cornell University, and could have devastating consequences in some corners of the world if it persists for an extended period. In many places, livelihoods are already being upended. Dion Dayola, 49, leads a consortium of about 100 drivers who cruise metropolitan Manila, picking up passengers in the minibuses known as jeepneys. Now, only 32 of those drivers are on the road. The rest have left to search for other jobs or have turned to begging. The Philippines buy only a minuscule amount of oil from Russia, but the reality is that it doesn't really matter whom you buy your oil from. The price is set on the global market. Everyone is bidding against everyone else, and no country is insulated, including the United States, the world's second largest oil producer after Saudi Arabia. Persistently, expensive energy is stirring up political discontent, not only in places where the war in Ukraine feels remote or irrelevant, but also in countries that are leading the opposition to Russia's invasion. Last month, Mr. Biden proposed suspending the tiny federal gas tax to reduce the sting of $5 a gallon gas. And Mr. Biden and other leaders of the Group of Seven this past week discussed a price cap on exported Russian oil, a move that is intended to ease the burden of painful inflation on consumers and reduce the export revenue that President Vladimir Putin is using to wage war. Price increases are everywhere. In Laos, gas is now more than $7 per gallon, according to the globalpetrolprices.com. In New Zealand, it's more than $8. In Denmark, it's more than $9. And in Hong Kong, it's more than $10 for every gallon. Leaders of 3 French energy companies have called for an immediate, collective, and massive effort to reduce the country's energy consumption, saying that a combination of shortages and spiking prices could threaten social cohesion next winter. In poor countries, the threat is more fraught as governments are torn between offering additional public assistance, which requires taking on burdensome debt, and facing serious unrest. In Ecuador, government gas subsidies were instituted in the 1970s, and every time officials have tried to repeal them, there's been a violent backlash. The government spends roughly $3 billion a year to freeze the price of regular gas at $2.55 and the price of diesel at $1.9 per gallon. On June 26th, President Guillermo Lasso proposed shaving 10 cents off each of those prices, but the powerful Ecuadorian Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities, which has led 2 weeks of protests, rejected the plan and demanded reductions of 40 and 45 cents. On Thursday, the government agreed to cut each price by 15 cents and the protests subsided. "We are poor and we can't pay for college," said Maria Yan Mitaxi, 40, who traveled from a village near the Cotopaxi volcano to the capital of Quito, where the Central State University is being used to shelter hundreds of protesters. "Tractors need fuel," she said. "Peasants need to get paid." The gas subsidies, which amount to nearly 2% of the country's gross national product, are starving other sectors of the economy, according to Andres Albuja, an economic analyst. Health and education spending was recently reduced by $1.8 billion to secure the country's large debt payments. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is using money the country makes from the crude oil it produces to help subsidize domestic gas prices. But analysts warn that the revenue the government earns from oil can't make up for the money it is losing by temporarily scrapping taxes on gas and by providing an additional subsidy to companies that operate gas stations. In Nigeria, where public education and healthcare are in dire condition and the state cannot ensure its citizens electricity or basic safety, many people feel that the fuel subsidy is the one thing the government does for them. Kola Salami, who owns the Valentino Unisex Salon in the outskirts of Lagos, has had to hunt for affordable fuel for the gas generator he needs to run his business. If they stop subsidizing it, he said, I don't think we can even. His voice trailed off. In South Africa, one of the world's most economically unequal countries, the rising price of fuel has created one more fault line. As President Cyril Ramaphosa campaigned for re-election at the ruling African National Congress's conference in December, even the party's traditional allies have seized on the cost of fuel as a failure of political leadership. In June, after fuel reached beyond $6 a gallon, a record high, the Congress of South Africa trade unions marched through Durban, a city already wrecked by violence and looting last year and floods this year. Higher fuel prices have been devastating, Sizwe Pamela, a spokesman for the trade union, said. The dizzying spiral in gas and oil prices has spurred more investment in renewable energy sources like wind, solar, and low-emission hydrogen. But if clean energy is getting an investment boost, so are fossil fuels. Last month, Premier Li Keqiang of China called for increased coal production to avoid power outages during a blistering heat wave in the northern and central parts of the country and a subsequent rise in demand for air conditioning. Meanwhile, in Germany, coal plants that were slated for retirement are being refired to divert gas into storage supplies for the winter. There is little relief in sight. We will still see high and volatile energy prices in the years to come, said Fatih Birol, the executive director of the International Energy Agency. At this point, the only scenario in which fuel prices go down, Mr. Birol said, is a worldwide recession. Gab Ellison reporting for Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
All right, thank you so much, Gab Ellison, for that report. The inability of La République du Cameroon to settle its internal and external debts effectively, pay civil servant salaries confirmed by the IMF and World Bank as a failed state is no longer a secret, as the insolvency has been publicly displayed through fuel scarcity. This insolvency of the state of La République du Cameroon is due principally to the stupid war declared by the octogenarian head of state, Paul Biya, on the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, which has wrecked the economy even though some are blaming these on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Since 2 weeks today, commuters, car owners, motorcycle riders, and households in Yaoundé and the capital of French Cameroon have not been having it easy to make ends meet due to the fuel scarcity, as the government resorted to rationing with shrewd dealers in the precious liquid, resulting to hoarding in order to extort desperate seekers. Let's show you this video.
Seigneur Jésus-Christ, voilà les motomans avec les... Ah mon Dieu, ah Seigneur, mon pays, partagez l'argent, nous on part, Seigneur. Non, dans le pays, sont partagés. Vendez l'argent, vous partagez. Vendez le pays, si vous le partagez, l'argent, nous on go.
You've just seen the video for yourself, and even those in need had to bribe sellers to get fuel to avoid long queues. Drivers say their incomes have nosedived since Yaoundé ran short of fuel this month and the scarcity spread to other towns. La République du Cameroon's government says several thousands public buses, taxis and trucks are not in use because of the fuel shortage, the second one to hit the country since April. La République du Cameroon authorities add that thousands of vehicles have been halted by a fresh scarcity of fuel caused in part by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, admonishing that it's been forced to spend nearly $500 million in fuel subsidies since Russia's February invasion, as Western sanctions have hindered trade with Moscow. Cameroon's energy minister, in a press release on Monday, again blamed Russia and its invasion of Ukraine. Western sanctions for Russia's assault have hampered its trade and led to volatile higher prices for oil and gas.
Cameroon buys more than half its gasoline from Russia, one of the world's top suppliers of petroleum products, wheat and fertilizer. La République du Cameroon's government says it has already spent $485 million on fuel subsidies since Russia's invasion in February and may need to spend more than $1 billion this year. The big question is, why should La République du Cameroon be shifting blames? Well, while we answer that, let us consider again why La République du Cameroon is seen as a failed state. By some indicators, Cameroon is not faring well. Economic growth has generally been low. Unemployment is admirably low as well, especially compared to neighboring states. To crown it all, many still live in poverty, and the country ranks amongst the 25 worst in the world on Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. The disconnect between narratives of stability and progress and those of desperation and disenfranchisement is profound.
And you know, unlike many long-serving leaders, Biya is not an omnipresent part of Cameroon's day-to-day realities. Criticized as an absentee president because of his frequent and long sojourns abroad, Biya operates at a figurative and often literal remove from his constituents. His cabinet rarely meets, and he states reasons for seeking yet another 7 years in office is simply that the people's overwhelming cause have demanded he do so. A bold new approach to address what ails the country seems unlikely to be forthcoming, yet the country's opposition is fractured and often feckless. The very systems of democratic representation and accountability, of debate and coalition building that should be working to reconcile the country seem hopelessly broken. La République du Cameroon seems to be experiencing not just an absence of effective leadership, but a total failure of politics. And that's why the Southern Cameroons want to be out.
Now, let's consider the mid-1980s to the early 2000s. The crisis resulted in rising prices in Cameroon, trade deficits, and loss of government revenue. The government of Cameroon acknowledged the crisis in 1987. Outside observers and critics blamed poor government stewardship of the economy. The government instead placed the blame on the fall of the prices of export commodities, particularly a steep drop in the price of petroleum. President Paul Biya announced that all our export commodities fell at the same time. Cameroon's trade partners, particularly France, Germany, and the United States, offered to help the country, but Cameroon balked at their condition that the country follow strict cost-cutting suggestion laid out by the International Monetary Fund (IMF). Instead, Cameroon formulated its own plan. Civil servants lost access to subsidized electricity, housing, and telephones. Part of the government vehicle fleets were sold. Older civil servants were forced into retirement. The official working schedule was changed. Economic missions and foreign embassies from Cameroon were closed, and state and parastatal enterprises were privatized.
And looking at the 1987 to 1988 budget reduced government spending by 18%, the first time in the country's history that the budget decreased. The measures met with international approval, but violent crime rose as a result. Cameroon's plan also failed to rein in corruption. By October 1988, the intended effect was less than had been hoped, and Cameroon agreed to an IMF aid package worth $150 million and accepted a structural adjustment program (SAP) loan from the World Bank. The African Development Bank, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom loaned the government for the funds. Cameroon has since focused on paying off its international debt and further restricting public salaries and pay rises to civil servants. However, the consensus among Cameroonians both at home and overseas is that the economic hardship is as a result of public funds theft by the Biya administration. Members of his regime constantly steal public funds and build megastructures in other countries such as France without any serious legal action being taken by the Biya administration.
Now, if we want to talk about Paul Biya himself, now he's known to have results in Europe where he spends more time enjoying the proceeds of his theft than he does in his own country. Now, just to add up, while La Republic du Cameroon is a failed state, as reported by Kemi Ashu yesterday, she says Tiko Douala Road with endless accidents and the genocidal colonialists have done nothing for 61 years after they colonized southern Cameroons. Now, she goes on to say, imagine the Nga Che or Kilo could have done in terms of building roads in our country. Says these barbaric, uncivilized people need to leave our country. Another ghastly accident again today with many lives lost. She says, rest in peace is not good enough. So you have to draft, draft and draft.
You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned.
Fellow Ambazonians, this is an announcement declaring 3 days national lockdown from Monday the 25th to Wednesday the 27th of July 2022. This lockdown has to do with the visit of President Macron to La République du Cameroun. We all know that the war between La République du Cameroun and the Federal Republic of Ambazonia is a proxy war fought by the French, our true warriors, our true enemies who are fighting us. Behind the shadows are the French. Mr. Macron, the President of France, is therefore the real perpetrator of the genocide that has been declared on our people. And he is visiting neighboring La République du Cameroun to review, encourage, and visit his troops, his genocidal troops. Ambazonia is not invited to that inglorious occasion, except for one blackleg, Mr. Frundi, who has been invited to represent himself. We in Ambazonia, all Ambazonians, we will use these 3 days to mourn. The whole territory of Ambazonia should observe these 3 days as mourning days. We want to mourn our more than 45,000 innocent souls that have been brutally slaughtered by the French paid armies of La République in our country. And this genocide is ongoing. We are mourning. Our territory will be in complete lockdown. Our borders, especially with La République, shall be locked down, shall be closed during this time. We are calling on Mr. Macron to tell his handlers to meet us as quickly as now for a meaningful negotiated settlement to this war that is devouring our people unjustly. During these days, these 3 days, all forces are put on notice. All Ambazonian restoration forces should do everything to enforce this order nationwide and make sure that our borders with La République are closed, so that if by any means Mr. Macron on his way from France or on his way to Benin flies over our airspace, he should be able to see that Ambazonia is mourning. And even if he does not see it, that his own press in Yaoundé and his intelligence services in his embassy should be able to communicate to him clearly where the state of Ambazonia and what is happening right now. This is the right thing to do, and may God continue to protect our country. God bless you.
It is now clear French President Macron will visit one of the French provinces, La République du Cameroon, from Monday 25th to Tuesday 26th of July 2022. According to CNA News of Mfo Hansen, secession and armed conflict in Anglophone regions may be top on discussion during the first visit of French President Macron. In reaction to that, the president of Ambazonia, Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako, says, "No way, enough of the arrogance. You are not talking about Ambazonia in the absence of Ambazonia ever again. There's going to be this bearing to such talks. In fact, it is of no effect to the peoples of Ambazonia. The Swiss-led process is the only acceptable process by Ambazonia and the only internationally recognized way forward."
And it is worthy to note that Macron's visit comes 7 years after the last French president's state visit to La République du Cameroon. On July 3rd, 2015, former President Francois Hollande touched down in Yaoundé. Take note that the war in Ambazonia is 6 years already, and France hasn't shown any engagement to enhance a political solution. During Hollande's visit answering to a question from journalists, President Paul Biya said, "Only the fit can be able to stay longer in power and not those who desire." Macron's visit, a timely intervention from Master, is what people will be wondering, or what really is the objective of his visit. La République du Cameroon is a former French territory mandated by the United Nations under the trusteeship system. But after independence in 1960, observers say that the body of France has left Cameroon, but the spirit is still present in everyday major decision-making.
The cream of delegation accompanying Emmanuel Macron leaves much to be desired. Frank Parry, who is the Special Advisor for African Affairs, has an authoritative approach towards major decision-making processes at LC Presidential Palace in African Affairs. Former British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia is suffering from a belligerent occupation by La République du Cameroon. Paul Biya has declared war on the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. The Cameroons under Biya's leadership are going towards an uncertain destination. Paul Biya is weak and can barely rule his country. Recently, his Secretary General Ferdinand Ngongo is seen as Cameroon's de facto leader, representing the president, signing important releases. Observers think that there is a risk war within the Unity Palace and amongst prospective successors who have not yet made their intentions known. Among them, Frank Emmanuel Biya, Paul Biya's son, who has recently frequented Cameroon. Frank has not reacted to the creation of a movement in his name, neither has he rejected it. This leaves room for confirmation that he might be eyeing his father's throne. Succession in Central Africa has become a new normal. Gabon, Chad, Equatorial Guinea are all birds of the same species.
The former colonial master, France, represented by Macron, could be making his own decision that will suit French interest. This is not ruled out. The Southern Cameroon's Ambazonians armed conflict. What is it about it? The 6 years old armed conflict in Ambazonia has exposed France's position. As many diplomatic sources have said, France does not want to make a public position on it, nor back talks for peace. Some of the positions of France backing talks are said to be lip service, as they have not matched words with actions. Ambazonian fighters have also decided to destroy anything having links with France, such as the sanitation company Haïsakam, brewery company Les Brasseries du Cameroun, Alliance Franco-Cameroonese, among others. Macron acting fast to protect French interests may be a stitch in time that saves 9.
France is already getting unpopular in Guinea, Central African Republic, and chased out of Mali. Could this be a ploy to re-establish French dominance and of French imperialism? Now that's the big question. The president of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako, is categoric. He says nobody should dare talk about Ambazonia ever again in the absence of her leadership. That's why Ambazonia must be locked down for 3 days straight to send a clear message to Macron and his governor Biya that Ambazonia has restored her stolen independence and there is no stopping her. Now let's watch this video excerpt of Manyu County as compiled by Gab Ellison.
Ayumoyo Council. Brief presentation of Ayumoyo Council. The Ayumoyo Council is found in Manyu Division of the southwest region of Cameroon, situated some 45 kilometers from Mamfe, the capital of Manyu Division. The municipality is situated roughly between the towns of Ikom in Nigeria and Mamfe in Cameroon, and figuring as one of the border councils in the Republic. It shares its western boundary with the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Akwaya lies in the north. Upper Bayang and Mamfe Central occupies the eastern boundary, while the south is shared with the Mudember and Toko councils. It covers a total surface area of approximately 3,442 kilometers square, benefiting 3 forest management units. Ayumoyok is about 300 kilometers from the southwest capital Boya. The Ayumoyok municipality has 68 villages, 63 villages and 5 urban spaces: Abakpa, Abat, Afap, Agborkem, Jamen, Ajaman, Ayayundip, Akwa, Akwen, Araru, Ayaoke, Ayukaba, Babi, Babong, Bajo, Bakogo, Bakot, Bakwele, Basu, Bayenti, Baib, Arsibong, Baib Osing, Pinder, Ebam, Ebinsi, Ekogate, Ekok, Ekonmanawa, Ekonmanayong Are, Ekongate, Esegim, Etikem, Ewele, Eyangamanga, Eyumayok, Inokun, Kembong, Kuri, Mbakang, Mbagem, Mbatop, Mbeyan, Mbida, Tabo, Mbobwi, Mbofong, Mfuni, Mbakati, Mpot, Ndebaya, Ndekwai, Ndwap, Nkogo, Njeke, Nkemechi, Nsanakang, Nsanaragati, Ntenako, Ogomoko, Ogurang, Okoroba, Okurikang, Okuri, Onaku, Osele, Osing, Otu, Tabo, Talangai, Abakpa, Abat, Afab. The estimated population is about 78,000 inhabitants, constituting one ethnic group, Ejagam, split up into 3 clans. The clans are Central Ejagam, Njemaya, and Obang. Besides these 3 clans, other groups of people resident in this area, and they include the Northwesterners and Nigerians. Nkembong was seen to have the highest population with about 9,000 inhabitants, and followed by Osing with about 6,000 inhabitants, and the least populated village was Abapa with about 40 inhabitants. It was also noted that the Central Ejagam clan was the most populated, and then the Ejagam Njemaya, and the least populated clan was the Obang. Gab Ellison reporting for Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
The economy of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia has been limping with the objective of the colonial regime of La République du Cameroon headed by Paul Biya to render southern Cameroon's Ambazonians miserable. Their situation has worsened with the war declared since 2017 by Paul Biya on the people of Ambazonia. Forced with the absence of industries, a scheme by the colonial La République du Cameroon regime to impoverish the people of Ambazonia, the people of Ambazonia have embraced business and farming for survival. To paralyze the farming sector, the colonial regime has decided to abandon all the farms to market roads in Ambazonia, making it difficult for crops to be removed from farms. To kill businesses in southern Cameroon, business premises have been burned down and some shops looted by the colonial military in Bamenda. On Tuesday, July 19, 2022, the colonial authorities in Bamenda took upon themselves to shut down business premises at commercial venues, the business hub of Bamenda, chief town of the Midland region of Ambazonia. Now you can say that this is a calculated attempt to punish the people of Ambazonia. What can be the justification why there is no industry in the southern Cameroon? Why are the farms to market roads abandoned by the boys' regimes?
You know, the people of Bamenda, chief town of Midland region of Ambazonia, on Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, woke up to see a heavy deployment of La République du Cameroon's military at major streets and road junctions. This deployment was to prevent shop owners to gain access to their shops, to secure the business hub of the town Commercial Avenue and surrounding business premises for the installation ceremony of a newly appointed Colonial Brigadier General. Circulation around the city of Bamenda was hampered by the colonial military armed to teeth. Undaunted gathered that shop owners were to open their shops as from 1 p.m. according to instructions from the colonial authorities. But before Undaunted left the Commercial Avenue at 4 p.m., shop owners were not still able to open their shops. Shop owners wondered why such a ceremony should not be carried out in any of the army barracks where businesses would not be perturbed. The general conclusion from those who we've talked to was that the colonial authorities did not have the common man's interest at heart. This lockdown just added more injury to the wound the people of Ambazonia are suffering with following the wanton arrogation of commercial motorbikes without any justification for such actions against the people who are just struggling to survive. Shop owners had to loiter around for the whole day without making a dime. This is really pathetic, a sad story we do not want to tell.
There are numerous checkpoints in southern Cameroon mounted by the colonial regime's police force. These so-called forces of law and order are gradually yet steadily draining the people of southern Cameroon financially. Commercial township drivers now do work, but it is the so-called forces of law and order that are benefiting as they are obliged to settle all the checkpoints each day. To be able to take home something after settling all the difficult and different checkpoints financially, drivers have increased the fare per drop. The poor with little or no economic activity is now compared to pay higher transportation costs as compared to the case before the ongoing crisis that is 6 years and counting, which is of course caused by marginalization of southern Cameroons by La République du Cameroon. To make matters worse for the people of southern Cameroon, the different roads within the city center of the Midland region of Ambazonia are begging for rehabilitation, a wish that the Yaoundé regime is paying a dead ear to. Undaunted, head of the extra extortion scheme by the police force on traveling agencies, and decided to investigate the situation. Before we will bring you your findings, let's have these rhetorics. Why should commercial cab drivers be paying money to the government without appropriate roads for them to drive on? Should the government keep taking from a people without providing for them the social basic amenities? Anyways, it's possible for a regime with an intention to paralyze people, like the colonial regime of Paul Biya, right? The only way for the people of southern Cameroon to regain their insulted dignity would be to part ways with such a regime.
And still on the same day, 19th July 2022, Undaunted on a fact-finding mission decided to board a bus of one of the traveling agencies in Bamenda. This bus was leaving the Midland region to Ambazonia to La République du Cameroon. The bus left the agency at about 5 p.m. Due to the bad nature of the city roads, the bus arrived the first police checkpoint at 6:15 p.m., a locality of the Bamenda 1 local government area called Mike 1. The policeman on duty asked the driver that it is above 6 p.m. and the bus can't continue the journey, that the driver should return the passengers to the agency. After a while, the bus was allowed to continue with the journey. That is after the driver, who pleaded anonymity, said he was only asked to continue after paying the sum of 5,000 francs CFA, an equivalent of $10 US. 2 kilometers from there, the bus that Undaunted boarded, met with another police checkpoint at Mile 3, and this set was bold enough to go straight to the point without blinking. They told the driver that for him to continue, he would have to pay a sum of 8,000 francs CFA, an equivalent of 16 US dollars. And the driver thought killing something there, he thought maybe negotiating it down, but the 8,000 francs CFA was paid, and that was when the journey continued. And then again, they met the last checkpoint at the borderline between Southern Cameroon and La République du Cameroun at Matazan. And everybody in the bus had to step down and present their national identity card. The driver again paid a sum there, and when they asked, he answered, when the people in the bus asked how much he paid, he just answered, "Masam leave so," that's in Pidgin would mean, "Sir, just let it go." What transpired in La République du Cameroun was no longer of interest, because the interest was what Southern Cameroonian transportation forces are going through in the hands of the colonial police forces in Southern Cameroon.
Now, still looking at the bus we took, the driver was forced to pay the sum of 12,000 francs CFA, amount he disclosed and in addition to one he failed to disclose. Multiply this amount to the number of buses that were on the road at that same time and probably that same day. In the case where the driver refused to pay this money, he will be obliged to go back with the passengers on board. Imagine that. The policemen cared less of the different appointments the passengers on board might be having. Is that right? This is just but one of the atrocities of La République du Cameroun to the people of Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia.
You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned.
Let's take a look at the location of Manu Division. The region that is referred to as Manu County today is an area found in the Midland Zone portion of the southern Cameroon's equatorial rainforest region, precisely in the Cross River region along the Ambazonia-Nigerian border. It lies between latitude 5 degrees and 6 degrees 30 north and longitude 8 degrees 6 and 9 degrees 55 east of the equator. The people of Manu share common borders with Nigeria in the west, the Widukum people to the northeast, Nkwe and Mundani people to the east, and the Mbo people to the southwest. The greatest length across the Manu land is from Nchang in the west to Sabes in the east, a distance of 68.4 kilometers as the crow flies and approximately 97.6 kilometers by road. The greatest breadth is from Fatuk in the south to Eyang in the north, which is 51.2 kilometers as the crow flies. Mamfa is the county headquarters of Manu County, and the total land area occupies approximately 65,488 square kilometers in the 4 subdivisions of Mamfa Central, Akwaya, Ayumoyok, and Upper Banyang of the Manu County.
All right, let's look at the origin, migration, and settlement of the Manu people. The indigenous population of the Manu County, who today constitute the tribes like the Bayang, the Kyakas, the Ayangs, and the Bokis, all originated eastward from Ekoi in southeastern Nigeria. The real factors responsible for their movements remain clouded because it is based on speculation. However, a Jagam and Bayang oral tradition holds that intertribal wars, the escape from slave raiders, and the desire by some ethnic fishermen to do fishing at the Manu River were the 3 fundamental factors responsible for the people's migration. In the southward movement from Nigeria, the people were led by a hunter, Akwem, who took them through the forest, crossing rivers and streams and trekking upon hills and valleys. They subsequently arrived at the Akok border and eventually settled at the forested area today known as Eyumoyok, from where internal dissension led to a split within the group. This was due to the fact that the leader of the group, Akwem, began raiding some of his able men and sold them out of the group as slaves to Nigerian slave traders who wandered across the length and breadth of the borders in search for escaped slaves.
You know, those who separated from Akwem's group later settled elsewhere and opened up new sites for their settlement. It is believed that the villages of Kimbong, Ndempaya and Mbankwen came into existence as a consequence of the separation, and majority of the Ejagam speakers trace their origin from this historic movement. Okay, well, on the contrary, Bayang oral traditions trace the origin and migrations of the indigenes of Mamfe from the waterside areas and not from Ekok borders. Sources here explain clearly that Efik fishermen have for long carried out fishing activities in Nigeria, Cross River, and during one of their downward fishing sessions, they came back into contact with the famous river Manu. Realizing that their fishing activities were more fruitful in the Virgin River, they saw no need going back to Nigeria, where there were a lot of fishing competition. Having got this revelation, they began erecting permanent structures for settlement. With time, as other fishermen migrated downward towards the river Manu, their number increased and new sites were cleared for settlement. Most of the Banyang, Anyang, and Boki speakers trace their history from this migratory trend.
Nevertheless, in spite of this controversy about the origin of migration and settlement of the indigenous population of the Banyang people, a large majority of the informants held tight to the fact that the history of the people generally came from two migratory routes. According to Chief Esim, therefore, while some indigenes came through the border of Ekok because of slave raids, others who were involved in fishing activities came through the waterside. Hence, both sources are quite substantial in explaining the people's history. Worth noting is that those who came through the borders, Kiaka speakers, later on trekked to join their brothers, Bayang, Ayang, and Boki, who had settled along the banks of the river and carried out fishing. Hence, in spite of these double-trend migration, population concentration was around the river Mayu, where the trade in smoked fish had developed, and Ebakau village was the first village that actually developed. This history of migration and settlement necessitated the practice of the parallel trade as the people of the Mayu County of Ambazonia and those of the eastern region of Nigeria considered as having the same historical background.
You know, even after the erection of the national and international boundaries between the two states of southern Cameroon and Nigeria, the people of the Manu County of Ambazonia precisely, and those in the eastern region of Nigeria, still found reasons to commune with one another. We'll bring you more of Manu County on Saturday during the draft pre-show with Undaunted, but let's get another vital coverage about Manu from Gab Ellison.
The economy. The economy of the Manu people was principally agricultural. However, in the past, the people also practiced other activities like fishing, hunting, poultry, animal husbandry, and trading. Agriculture was subsistent, the soil fertility in the area was low, and thus extensive forms of cultivation were widely practiced since the land was vast and unrestricted. The two most important food crops grown were cocoyams and plantains. There were also subsidiary crops like maize, beans, groundnuts, cassava, pumpkin, melon, pepper, yams, sweet potatoes, and kapem, that is, local tomatoes. The techniques of cultivation were generally crude and rudimentary. A piece of land was roughly cleared, mostly at the beginning of the dry season, by men, who then allowed the rest of the work to be done by the women. The women then cleaned the ground, hoed it, and planted crops, except plantains, which the men tended. The only implements put into use were the women's hoes and men's machetes. Shifting cultivation and crop rotation were also practiced. Rights to land ownership were based on the principle which established that whoever cleared a virgin bush lay claim to it. This continued even after the land was left to fallow. In the Manyu land, food crops were grown solely for consumption, with the exception of the villages of Umbijang, Bachuakagbe, Bachuantai, Bisongabang, and Nchang, where some of the crops cultivated were marketed. Use was also made of a number of bush products, with most important being the palm kernels. The palm industry became very important to the Manyu people as a source of trade when the slave trade was prohibited by the colonial powers in the 19th century. The Manyu people were equally engaged in both the long and short distance trades in addition to farm cultivation. The short distance trade, which was carried out locally, involved the sale of foodstuffs and dried meat. The local people also participated in the long distance trade going through the grass fields of Cameroon to the lower Cross River Basin. They acted as middlemen handling items like European cloth, guns, salt, ivory, and slaves from other areas in exchange for palm oil and palm kernels, which they produced. Other items of trade included foodstuffs, dried meat, dried fish, brass, traditional dresses, and even secret items. The most important trading villages were Tali and Ebuensuk. Part-time hunting and fishing were also performed in the area. Hunting was done mostly during the rainy season with the use of Dane guns, spears, clubs, bows, and arrows, and planted traps in search of animals such as antelopes, porcupines, deers, elephants, and many other species of animals. The meat was either consumed locally or sold in the local markets. Fishing too was caught with the help of nets or wicket baskets as they were known, and the poisoning of water and the fish with specially grown leaves called bekwap. Other economic activities carried out by the Manyu people included the making of drums, the molding of pots, and the weaving of baskets and sleeping mats. Although the Manyu economy was subsistent in nature, they were generally considered to be lazy. It is, however, worth noting that in the society considerable emphasis was placed upon a man's wealth and upon the need to obtain wealth. One of the keynotes of community life was the individual quest for status, which was largely dependent upon the person's initiative and the qualities he exhibited, together with the wealth he commanded. Mamfe Council. Brief presentation of Mamfe. Mamfe Municipality is found in Manyu Division of the Southwest Province of Cameroon. It is located in the northern part of the southwest. It is about 74 kilometers away from the Cameroon-Nigeria border. The council shares common boundaries in the north with Akwaya Council, in the east and south with the Umoyo Council, and in the west with Tinto Council. The Mamfe Rural Council area is made up of 11 autonomous villages grouped into 4 clans: Bachuantai, Besongabang, Egbeko, Eshobi, Etemetek, Enyangtui, Enyanag, Mamfe Center, Marwan, Nchang, Mfaitoktu, Okoyong. Mamfe Town, which is the headquarters of Manyu Division, has extended from small Mamfe as the main village to parts of Besongabang and the Beku villages. The population is about 85,000 inhabitants over a surface area of 744 square kilometers, giving a population density of 114 persons per square. The indigenes of the Mamfe Council area are the Bayangs. Generally, there is a mixture of several Cameroonian tribes that inhabit the Mamfe Council area, but the domineering tribes include the Anyangs, Kenyangs, and tribes from Midland Zone, Bali, Banso, Widikum. The Igbeku village and small Mamfe village are the natives to pioneers of Mamfe Town. The inhabitants speak a Bayang language as their mother tongue, called Inyang, although English is the official language, spoken along with Pidgin and several other dialects, including Ejagam. The city is also noteworthy for the high proportion of Nigerians who live there. Historical profile of Mamfe. The name Mamfe comes from the Bayangi language. When Germans first arrived in the area via the Cross River, the Germans greeted a local man at the Beku River site who was carrying sand from the shore and tried interrogating him about where they were. The Bayang man didn't understand and only said in his dialect, "Mamfefa, where should I put it?" The Germans heard this as Mamfe and named the area so. Mamfe Municipal Council corresponds to the Mamfe local government area. Mamfe Town is the headquarters of Manyu County. Mamfe Rural Council started as far back as 1917 as Mamfe Native Authority. It was comprised of the present-day Nguti, Fontem, Widikum, Akwaya, Eyumoyok, Tinto, and Mamfe Central Council. In 1978, when Eyumoyok was created, it became Mamfe Rural Council. Tinto was later carved out in 1995 to let alone Mafe Central. Before 1995, the colonial government appointed the municipal administrators. Gab Ellison reporting for Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
With less than 48 hours to the highly anticipated CAF Award 2022, CAF has revealed the three for all the women and men categories ahead of the much-awaited awards gala on Thursday, 21st July 2022 in Rabat, Morocco.
The awards will be held in Rabat, Morocco on 21st July 2022 at 20 local time and 19 GMT. The top three list is from the list of nominees previously revealed by CAF in both men and women categories.
In the Player of the Year category, four-time winner Asisat Oshoala of Nigeria is in the hunt for a fifth crown. Gab Ellison has more.
Latest world sports. CAF reveals top 3 final list of nominees ahead of CAF Awards on Thursday. With a few hours to go, the highly anticipated CAF Awards 2022, CAF has revealed the 3 for all the women and men categories ahead of the much-awaited awards gala on Thursday, 21st July 2022 in Rabat, Morocco. The awards will be held in Rabat, Morocco on 21st July 2022 at 8 p.m. local time. The top 3 list is from the list of nominees previously revealed by CAF in both men and women categories. In the Player of the Year category, 4-time winner Asisat Oshoala of Nigeria is in the hunt for a 5th crown. However, she faces stiff opposition from Cameroonian Ajaran Shutunjoya and new entrant Grace Chander of Zambia for the women's category. In the men's category, former winners Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane of Egypt and Senegal will have to battle it out with Senegal shotstopper Edouard Mendy, also a newcomer in the 3-man list. Full list of top 3 nominees in alphabetical order: Player of the Year Women, Njara Unshutunjoya, Cameroon and International Milano; Asisat Oshoala, Nigeria and Barcelona; Grace Chander, Zambia and B. Kazigort. Player of the Year Men: Edouard Mendy, Senegal and Chelsea; Mohamed Salah, Egypt and Liverpool; Sadio Mane, Senegal and Bayern Munich. Basketball: Charlotte Hornets Miles Bridges charged with felony domestic and child abuse after alleged assault on partner. Charlotte Hornets forward Miles Bridges was charged with felony domestic and child abuse stemming from an alleged assault on his partner that happened in front of their children. Los Angeles prosecutors said Tuesday Bridges, 24, faces 1 felony count of injuring a child's parent and 2 felony counts of child abuse under circumstances or conditions likely to cause great bodily injury or death. The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office said in a statement, the NBA player allegedly assaulted his girlfriend on or about June 27 and 28 in front of their 2 children, according to the DA's statement, which cited a criminal complaint on the matter. Bridges pleaded not guilty to the charges during a court appearance on Wednesday. Domestic violence creates physical, mental, and emotional trauma that has a lasting impact on survivors, District Attorney George Casson said in the statement. Children who witness family violence are especially vulnerable and the impact on them is immeasurable. Mr. Bridges will be held accountable for his actions and our Bureau of Victim Services will support the survivors through this difficult process. Gab Ellison reporting for Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
And with that sports report, we have come to the end of Undaunted tonight. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories.
Around the world, from South Asia and Africa to Europe and Latin America, the cost of filling a car's tank, getting to work and cooking dinner has spiked. Fuel shortage hit La République du Cameroon as well, but they have been condemned by IMF, World Bank as a failed state. It is now clear the French President Macron will visit one of the French provinces, La République du Cameroon, from Monday 25th to Tuesday 26th of July 2022. The economy of southern Cameroon had been limping with the objective of the colonial regime of La République du Cameroon, headed by Paul Biya, to render southern Cameroonians miserable.
Today we dissected again the alarming extortion on transporters by La République du Cameroon police force in Ambazonia as they mounted at different places. Draft is here again this weekend. Today we discovered Manu County. We talked about the history, culture and tourism sites. And in sports, CAF reviews top 3 finalists of nominees ahead of CAF Award on Thursday. And that was it for Undaunted tonight, bringing to the news Untold Stories. On behalf of my co-anchor Stir Smart and the entire Undaunted crew, we say thank you so much for tuning in. I am Oni Okbala.
We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.